Hi guys, welcome to this analysis session with Prashant today. Uh, Prashant basically did not take CAT this year because he has people at home who are not in a situation where a COVID will, if COVID happens, uh, it will be very, very complicated. Let me put it this way. That's about it. But Prashant, I'm pretty sure that you would actually have heard reports from students, especially given that you run a verbal course, that this year verbal has basically uh, thrown a uh, a googly all over again. So what are your reports on verbal? What
Hi
exactly?
Vivek, yeah, thanks for having me here.
Yeah.
Vivek, so I've talked to a few students, right, and the reports are actually conflicting, a little conflicting, right?
Hmm.
So I've got some students, and because of obviously every year what happens is a lot of the students who take the test in the previous year they appear for it again, right? So there's this overlap as well. So I have spoken to a few students today. In general, the consensus is that purple was tough, right?
Hmm.
But we had that last year as well. So last year was, I think, in terms of if you look at the overall analysis for the paper, verbal and LRDI have been regarded as tough again this year, and quant has been, students are quoting it as relatively easier, right? And but there is this element of subjectivity involved. We've got a student here who's complaining that, or who's rather sharing the fact that quant was very tough. I think on an individual to individual basis, that fluctuation, that subjectivity is there. But overall speaking, verbal has been, I think, a decent exam this year as well, right? Much like the previous year. So I won't say, because the element of subjectivity is so high, right? And people's subjective appearance, experiences, they kind of cloud their judgment a little. So there is that certain element. I think we can put it at par with last year or fractionally tougher. That's the general report, right? So
Okay.
that's where the exam is.
What is the sense of? I mean, given that that is the case, what is the sense of the type of cutoffs that we can expect this year?
I think there is just one caveat here that has to be kept in mind, because what has happened here is, and I think that is why the experience that people are going to have this year is going to be different from the previous year is, I think all of us expected that since they've scaled down the time from 3 hours to 2 hours, there was a general expectation that questions would see a similar kind of scaling, right? If you want to maintain the same level of questions, right? So most of us thought that it's going to be somewhere between 60 to 70. 75 was that outlier. So I think the first googly that they threw was they put in the number at 76. I don't see any
That's a very
statistical,
odd. Yeah, that's a very
there is
odd.
no statistical logic for it, right? You could have balanced it at 25 each. That's the easiest thing in the world to do. And there you cannot say that you can't, you just have to take one question out of an LRDI set, right? Add one more question, or and remove one VA question, one quant question, and you're done. But they, I think this googly is more for the fact that I think all the prep companies, I doubt if anyone had this format of 76 exact questions. So that's one googly that they've thrown in. And
That is true.
and I think the complication with that is, I don't think the level has gone down, right? From people's experiences and whatever I've spoken since morning, to spoken to a lot of students, and the general feedback is that the level of difficulty was something similar to the last year. And this is of the overall exam, and that extends to verbal as well. Now, if the number of questions are going to be 76 in the overall exam, and the time limit is going to go down from 3 hours to 2 hours at the same level of difficulty, I think everyone is going to find the paper harder, right? So that's a natural derivation out of it. And in VARC, how does it become worse? Because now you have to do 26 questions in 40 minutes, right? Your expectation was that almost basically, essentially, if you go by a time by split, uh, keeping the same level of difficulty, you expected 22. So you've added
Hmm.
four questions. Basically, you've added an RC, right? That's one
Okay.
RC more, or one four questions more within
Okay.
that same time limit. That is going to be the challenge, and that is why, right? So the level of difficulty, the perceived level of difficulty, this is not in terms of the exact LOD of the question itself. The time versus number of questions LOD, that has changed. I think, and
Okay.
that is where the perception might be that the paper is tougher, because obviously anyone who
Okay.
sits for the exam, you sit with that expectation that I'm going to solve the maximum number of questions. So you generally go in with that tendency. So anyone who would have gone in with that tendency, right, you would have felt, oh, 26 questions, 40 minutes, VARC, this is going to be tough now. The that I think is the biggest issue in this particular exam, or that is the one key thing which has basically, I think, changed. So score wise expectation, I think there will be a minor decrease. So in the overall scores, or the
Okay.
overall, if you look at the overall cutoffs and percentiles, I don't expect a huge variation from the previous year. Maybe a 5% deviation, a 5%, 5 to 7% reduction, right?
Okay.
After you've accounted for, obviously, the overall number of marks have reduced, right? So
Okay.
keeping that in mind, I think that should happen.
Okay. So, and is there any difference between slot one and slot two from what you have heard?
I've not really gone through the analysis for slot two. I'm still waiting on that. Right. I spoke to a few students and have not really gone through the slot one, slot two difference. Well, you've heard something about it. I'm still talking to people, so
I
this is what.
have I have no idea what is the difference between, but
Ah,
obviously there is one thing which is going to be there for slot two is that people were prepared for. I mean, everyone
correct.
saw what happened in slot one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's it's probably unfair. I mean, it's probably, I mean, foolish of us to believe that there will be some people who will probably have not seen what happened in slot one, especially when
No, no.
the
Everyone knew
time.
the format. The
No, no.
time there was no overlap this time.
Yes.
There was a clear difference between slot timings, right? So you had enough time to watch 5 or 6 YouTube Gyan videos before you landed up.
That is true.
I'm sure there would have been one title that would have come up that you'll get 100 percentile if you watch this video in the next 10 minutes. That would somebody would have come up with that also.
Okay.
So,
Or
but yeah,
increase your score by 10
increase
marks and
increase
yeah.
your score by 10 marks in those 30
It,
minutes. I think
okay.
more than anything else, practically speaking, I think after our years of experience and the fact that you've gone all gray and I've gone all bald while we've been teaching for cat, practically as people who've taken the test again and again or who've gone through the experience, you come to realize that a lot of things don't make that huge a difference, right?
Mhm.
So having that exact awareness of the number of questions is not going to fundamentally change your level or skill levels.
That's
That is
true.
not going to happen. It's just that it mentally calms you down a little. It has that calming effect. Know. A lot of students were actually indulging in something which I found to be very counterintuitive, or counterproductive. I'm sorry, was that there was this obsession. It was what was the exact level, what was tougher, should we change our strategy, should we change our way of doing things, which I found to be a little counterproductive, because at this stage you're just burdening yourself. You don't need to do that. Just focus on what you know. You know now the number of questions and the time limit, and just go and do your best. So should things should be kept simple.
Okay. So, last part about verbal as such. I mean, like, so
Huh,
there are 2 years in a row that verbal is
huh,
probably more difficult than what people were used to. Again,
huh.
2017 and 2016 and 18 were probably like the
I,
golden
I,
years in
I
terms
think
of verbal.
there is a. So I have a funny observation to share here.
Hmm.
The fact is that uh, so I've recorded previous year video solutions for previous year CAT exams. So this year we did that, right? We went through those, and so as the recording software is the same, the setup is the same, everything is the same, right? So keeping, and the person who's recording the solutions is the same, the speed of saying things or explaining things is the same. So as we've gone from 2017 to 19, the videos have gotten longer and longer and longer, right? From 17 to 19, it's a linear progression, right?
Okay.
And generally slot 2 videos have been longer than slot 1. So within
Okay.
the slots itself, this is explaining VRC. So my reverse analysis of that is that since I'm the same person explaining in a very similar fashion, there can be a 3 or 5% difference in the way I explain things, but it can't be like 15 or 20%, right? In terms of the recording time itself.
So you are
So
expecting another set of
yeah,
increase in recording time this year?
yeah, I'm expecting that per question there is going to be a slightly higher recording time. It just shows that the level is slightly going up. I think they're making VARC challenging. It might be based on the assumption that probably this is going to discount a few more engineers, which I think is not going to happen.
It is not happening. I mean, like, I
It
think
is not
these
happening.
days, yeah.
because essentially people who fill the form are going to take the exam. Engineers are filling the form, so they will take the exam. You can't really manipulate with the exam for that. You have to change the psyche to change that. So I think can expect that this year should be fractionally longer the videos. The VRC levels are higher, so that gives people, I think, the challenge with VRC becomes the fact that it's not a tangible subject. So that is the, I think, the toughest part for from a student's perspective, and this is from not the perspective of an educator. That's the toughest thing for a student as well, because it's very difficult to gauge how your preparation is going.
That's true.
So you might be doing all the things that your mentor is suggesting to you, and you might still be struggling with it. So that's, I think, the toughest part with VR, so that you have to be prepared for it a little mentally. You have to have that patience. So patience is supremely important, because you don't know
Okay.
when it's going to start clicking.
Okay. And what are your predictions for slot three?
Slot 3, expecting something similar, I think. So we'll have,
Okay.
I think what they generally try to do is that they fractionally increase the slot difficulties as time goes on. This
Hmm.
year they might just increase it fractionally to account for the fact that these people know what the paper pattern is, right? But then again, I think that's altogether a different discussion. The difference between slots and normalization, that's another Pandora's box, which should be left till the result day for people
Okay.
to discuss and debate and argue about.
Okay. So, any particular sources that you found for people who are taking VARC? Like any particular source of passages that you have
No,
found as
the
of now?
I so far haven't not really found out the sources, right? But I've asked all my students to share that information, that whatever you've gone through, whatever you remember, send in the keywords, and we'll try to research and compile those resources as soon as we can, come up with a reading list of sorts, right? That
Okay.
from where did they pick up the article? So we'll most definitely do that. I think
Okay.
anyways, CAT now
Releases
releases
the paper,
exams.
anyways.
So that makes our job actually a lot easier, in the sense that you know what the exact questions are going to be. Just have to wait for a few days. So then you get to know the paper itself.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I will not take a lot of Prashant's time today.
Yeah.
Prashant, thank you very much for
Yeah.
joining in.
Thank you for having me, Vivek.
Okay,
Yeah.
guys, in case you want to enroll for Word Pundit's courses, please do look at their website. The link will be available in the description of video in a few minutes. I mean, in a few hours, because I have to update quite a few links over
Yeah.
there. I will be updating it
Yeah.
by end of the day today. So,
Thanks a lot,
Prashant,
Vivek.
thank you again
Thanks a
for
lot,
joining
Vivek.
in.
Thanks for having me.
See
Chalo.
you. Yeah.
Okay. Bye bye.